He had everything, except a family. One letter from Quadruplets calling him Dad changed his world forever. A heartwarming journey of love, truth, and second chances. Harold Grant sat alone on his balcony, staring out at the endless green hills behind his mansion. The sky was blue, and birds flew peacefully above, but he didn't notice. His heart felt heavy like always. At 67, he had more money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. Still, no one ever called, no one ever visited. His phone only rang, for business. His doorbell never rang. Harold was the founder of Grant Tech, one of America's most powerful technology companies. Everyone in Silicon Valley knew his name. His face had appeared on magazine covers next to words like genius, revolutionary, and billionaire. But none of those titles made him feel anything anymore. He had no wife, no children. His parents were gone, and he had no siblings. His assistant of 10 years had quit last month, tired of his coldness. The media said he was a lonely man, but Harold didn't care what people thought. At least, that's what he told himself. On this quiet Thursday morning, he went to check his mail, as he did once a week. Most of it was junk. Flyers, advertisements, and donation requests. But one envelope was different. It was plain and white, no return address. Just his name typed neatly on the front, Mr. Harold Grant. Curious, he opened it. Inside was a letter written in neat handwriting. He adjusted his glasses and read the first line. "Dear Dad, we found you." His hand froze. "Dad," he read on, "we're sorry to write you like this. We're 4 siblings, quadruplets, born 21 years ago. Our mother, Christine, always told us about a man named Harold. She said he was a kind and brilliant man she once loved. She never told us much more, except that you never knew we existed. We don't want your money. We just want to meet you. We think you're our father. Please don't ignore this. Our names are Ellie, Evan, Emma, and Ethan. We live in Tulsa, Oklahoma." Harold blinked. Tulsa? His hands trembled slightly. The name Christine stabbed his memory like a flash of lightning. There had been a Christine, decades ago. A summer romance when he was working in Oklahoma during his early tech career. She had been sweet, smart, and strong-minded. They had fun, but when he moved to California to chase his dream, they lost touch. He never knew. "Quadruplets," he whispered aloud. "This must be some kind of joke." But deep down, something felt real about the letter. There was no begging, no drama, just a clear, heartfelt message. He folded the paper and sat in silence. All day he couldn't focus. The words ran through his head over and over. "You never knew we existed." He thought about Christine, her smile, her voice. Could it really be true? The next morning, he sat at his desk and searched for them online. Ellie, Evan, Emma, and Ethan from Tulsa. It didn't take long to find a family photo. 4 young adults smiling together, their names tagged on an old Facebook post. Harold stared at the screen, stunned. The boy, Evan, looked exactly like him when he was younger. Emma had Christine's eyes. It was like looking into a mirror of a past he never knew he left behind. Suddenly, a feeling he hadn't known in decades washed over him. Hope. He picked up the phone and called his lawyer. "Samuel, I need a private investigator." "Someone discreet," Harold said. "Of course, Mr. Grant. May I ask what this is about?" "I may have children. 4 of them." There was silence on the line. "I beg your pardon, sir." "You heard me." By the weekend, Harold had everything he needed. Background checks, birth certificates, even an old hospital record showing Christine listed the father as Harold G. But what confirmed everything was the DNA test, simple and undeniable. A 99.98% match. They were his children. For the first time in years, Harold cried, not for sorrow, but for time lost. time he could never get back. Christine had died 5 years ago in a car accident, but she had left behind the most precious, give 4 children who might still want to know him. The next morning, he sat down with a pen and paper. He didn't want to send an email. This needed to be personal. Dear Ellie, Evan, Emma, and Ethan, I received your letter. At first, I couldn't believe it, but now I know the truth. I am your father. I don't deserve your kindness or your curiosity, but if you will allow me, I would love to meet you. I've spent most of my life alone, not by choice, but by mistake. Maybe this is a second chance for all of us. I can come to Tulsa, or I can fly you here. I leave it up to you. With all my heart, thank you for writing to me. Harold Grant. He sealed the envelope with shaking hands and sent it by express mail. Then he sat in the quiet once again. But this time, the silence felt different. Not lonely, hopeful. Ellie stood by the mailbox with her hoodie soaked through. She pulled the letter from the box and stared at the return address. Harold Grant, San Francisco, California. Her breath caught in her chest. She ran back inside their small apartment, slamming the door behind her. Guys, it came! The letter, Ethan, dropped his guitar. Emma jumped up from the couch. Evan ran out of the kitchen, still holding a spoon and a bowl of cereal. Ellie held it out, and none of them moved for a moment. The world seemed to freeze around that white envelope. After all, their guessing, their arguing, and their late-night talks, they were finally going to hear from him. The man their mom had whispered about during bedtime stories. The man whose name had always been a mystery until last month. Open it, Emma said softly. Ellie nodded, tearing it open with careful fingers. She unfolded the paper and began to read. Out loud. Dear Ellie, Evan, Emma, and Ethan, I received your letter. At first I couldn't believe it, but now I know the truth. I am your father. I don't deserve your kindness or your curiosity, but if you will allow me, I would love to meet you. Her voice cracked. Maybe this is a second chance for all of us. She stopped and looked up. No one said a word. Then Ethan let out a breath. Well, he didn't say no. No, Emma said, shaking her head. He said yes. He wants to meet us. Are we really gonna do this? Evan asked. Like, actually go? The room filled with silence again. They had all grown up knowing something was missing. Their mom was everything. Strong, funny, loving, but they had always wondered. They had asked her so many times, who's our dad? She would only smile and say, someone I once loved, but who never got the chance to love you. They had never imagined he might be rich. A billionaire, that was almost a joke. It wasn't about the money. It was about the space in their lives, shaped like a father. That space had never been filled. Now, it might be. Emma finally spoke. I want to go. Ellie nodded. Me too, Ethan. Sat down on the couch. What if he changes his mind? What if he doesn't like us? Evan shrugged. Then we walk away. We've made it this far without him, but... Ellie looked down at the letter. What if he really wants this? What if he's been alone all this time? The idea made their hearts ache. Later that night they sat around. The kitchen table, a pizza box, open between them and the letter in the center. They talked for hours. They made a decision. 2 days later, Harold's phone rang. He hadn't slept much since sending the letter. He kept walking the halls of his massive home, wondering what it would feel like to finally fill them with voices, laughter, and life. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Grant, a young woman's voice said. His heart skipped. Yes? This is Ellie. I'm, one of the 4. He nearly dropped the phone. I'm so glad you called, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. We all read your letter. We want to meet you. If the offer's still open, we'll come. Harold's voice cracked. The offer's very much open. I'll send a private jet. Whoa, a jet? She laughed nervously. That's okay, he smiled. I'll make the arrangements right away, whatever you need. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Harold, he said quickly. Please, call me Harold. There was a pause. Okay, Harold. After they hung up, Harold stood in the middle of his hallway, stunned. They were coming. His children. The next few days passed in a blur. Harold called his housekeeper back. He ordered the guest rooms to be cleaned and filled with new furniture, soft blankets, and welcome baskets. He asked his chef to return for the week and planned out meals that college kids might like. Burgers, mac and cheese, fresh cookies. He even put soda in the fridge, something he hadn't drunk since 1993. On Saturday morning, a sleek jet landed at the Tulsa airport. 4 young adults stepped off slowly, carrying small bags and big nerves. Ellie wore her red hoodie and held Emma's hand. Evan wore jeans and a button-up shirt, trying to look calm. Ethan had his camera round his neck, taking photos of everything, even the jet. A driver held up a sign that said, "Welcome Ellie, Evan, Emma, and Ethan." They climbed into the black SUV, all looking at each other nervously. No one spoke much. The ride from the San Francisco airport to Harold's mansion took almost an hour. With every mile, their hearts pounded harder when they finally pulled up to the giant iron gates and saw the massive white mansion beyond. Ethan whistled low. "Dang," he said. "He's not just rich. He's like movie rich." But none of them smiled. The car stopped in the circular driveway. The doors opened, and there, standing on the front steps in a navy sweater and jeans, was Harold. He looked older than his photos, but his eyes, his sharp, intelligent eyes, were exactly the same ones Evan saw in the mirror every morning. They stepped out one by one. Harold took a shaky breath. "You're all even more beautiful than I imagined," he said. The 4 stood still. Then Emma took a small step forward. "Hi, Harold." He smiled. "Hi, Ellie." "Spoke next. We're really here." "Yes," Harold whispered, "and I hope you'll stay a while." Evan looked around. "Is this whole place yours?" "It's ours now," Harold said softly. Ethan looked up. "I don't even know you, but this feels like the start of something big." Harold's eyes welled up. He opened his arms awkwardly. There was a pause. Then Ellie stepped forward. She hugged him, and one by one, the others followed. For the first time in his next, "We're really here." "Yes," Harold whispered, "and I hope you'll stay a while." Evan looked around. "Is this whole place yours?" "It's ours now," Harold said softly. Ethan looked up. "I don't even know you, but this feels like the start of something big." Harold's eyes welled up. He opened his arms awkwardly. There was a pause. Then Ellie stepped forward. She hugged him, and one by one, the others followed. For the first time in his life, Harold Grant felt whole. Harold Grant felt whole. Harold barely slept that night. He had paced the hallway for hours, wondering if the kids, his kids, were comfortable. He had given them the biggest rooms, stocked them with snacks, fresh pajamas, and everything he thought they might need. But still, he worried. Would they leave the next day? Would they ever call him Dad? He wasn't sure what was worse, being alone or being given a taste of family and then losing it. At 7 a.m., he walked down to the kitchen in soft slippers only. To be surprised, the quadruplets were already there. Ellie was making toast. Emma poured orange juice. Ethan had the radio on, playing old country songs. Evan, clearly the morning grump, sat with his head on the table. Harold stopped in the doorway. They looked like they belonged. "You're up early," he said. Emma turned with a smile. "We thought we'd cook breakfast today." "Hope that's okay," Ellie added. Harold smiled and stepped inside. "More than okay. This kitchen hasn't seen life like this in years." Ethan handed him a plate. "You like bacon? Who doesn't?" They all laughed softly, and for the first time, the room didn't feel like a billionaire's kitchen. It felt like home. They sat down at the giant wooden table. The food was simple: eggs, toast, bacon, and juice. But to Harold, it was the best meal he'd had in decades. "I didn't even know how to crack an egg until I was 35, he admitted. Evan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you go to MIT?" Harold nodded. Graduated at 22, built my first tech company by 26. But scrambled eggs? Took me years to figure out. Emma giggled. That's kind of cute. They ate in silence for a while, until Ethan asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Why didn't you try to find us? The room froze. Harold looked down at his plate. I didn't know, he said quietly. Your mother, Christine, she never told me. We spent one summer together and I moved away for work. I thought it was over. He looked up, eyes glossy. If I had known, I would have come back in a heartbeat. The table stayed quiet. Finally, Ellie broke the silence. Mom was proud. Maybe she was afraid, or maybe she wanted to protect us. She did a good job, Emma whispered. But it was hard, not knowing where we came from. I'm sorry, Harold said. I can't take back the years I missed. But if you let me, I'd like to be part of your lives now. They all looked at each other. Then Evan asked, What does that look like? You flying us out here for visits, sending us money? Harold leaned forward. No, he said, it means real things. Talking, being there for birthdays, helping you when you need it, visiting you in Tulsa, meeting your friends, listening. When things go wrong, I don't care about money, Ellie added. We didn't write to you for that, I know. Harold nodded. That's why I answered. After breakfast, they gave Harold a crash course in their lives. Ellie was studying nursing and wanted to work in emergency care. She had a bold heart and a sharp tongue. Emma was studying art and showed Harold some of her paintings on her phone. He was amazed. She had talent that deserved a gallery. Ethan was the creative one, film major, part-time barista, and full-time dreamer. He talked about making documentaries and even joked about filming this whole reunion. Evan was the quietest, studying engineering like Harold once had. He had plans, big ones, but didn't like to talk much. Still, Harold saw himself in the boy, the same eyes, the same hunger. They spent the day walking the mansion grounds, laughing at how enormous the place was. Harold took them to the home theater, the game room, and even let them drive his collection of classic cars through the private roads. For the first time in his life, Harold didn't care about the tech meetings he was missing or the emails piling up. He was just a dad. That night they sat around the fireplace. The kids were curled up in blankets, holding mugs of hot cocoa. Emma looked at the flames and asked, Do you ever get lonely here? Harold nodded. All the time. Why didn't you marry? She asked gently. He thought for a moment. I think I was always waiting for something, for someone, and I never realized what I was missing until it was too late. He looked at the four of them. Until now, they all sat in quiet thought. Then Ethan whispered, You know, I always imagined what our dad might be like. Sometimes I pictured a guy in construction, sometimes a musician. Never once did I imagine a billionaire. Harold chuckled. I never imagined quadruplets. They laughed. And for a moment it wasn't awkward anymore. It was warm. Later, as the kids went up to bed, Ellie hung back. She looked at Harold. You know this isn't going to be easy, right? She said. We've got years of stuff to work through. Anger, questions. We're not just going to be a happy family overnight. Harold nodded. I understand. But, she added, you showed up. That counts. She turned to leave. Ellie? Harold called softly. She turned back. Thank you. For writing that letter, she smiled. Thank you for answering it. The morning sun streamed through tall windows as Harold stepped out of his study and found the living room empty. For a brief second, his heart dropped. Had they already left? But then he heard laughter echoing from the garden. He followed the sound and found the four of them under the big oak tree, sitting in a circle on the grass with juice boxes and a half-finished bag of chips between them. They looked like kids again. Ellie saw him and waved. Come sit. Harold smiled and walked over, sitting down on a bench nearby. Ethan pointed at the clouds. We were just talking about Mom, how she used to make us lie in the grass and look for shapes in the sky. Harold's smile faltered a little. Christine. She was special. I never forgot her. You must have meant something to her, Emma said. She never said a bad word about you. She always made you sound gentle. I wasn't always gentle, Harold replied quietly. Not to myself, at least. I was. Too focused, too afraid of failure. Evan spoke for the first time that morning. You ever think about going back to find her? Harold nodded. Many times. But I convinced myself it was too late, and after a while I thought she must have moved on. I was scared she'd forgotten me. Ellie looked down. She didn't. Harold closed his eyes for a moment, the wind playing softly with his hair. I wish I could say something to her now, he said. Tell her thank you, and I'm sorry. The group fell into silence. Then Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photo. This was taken a few weeks before the accident. It was a picture of Christine, standing between the four of them, all smiling in front of a food truck. She looked healthy, bright, and proud. Harold took the photo gently. His hands trembled. She looks exactly the same, he said. Time didn't take her from my memory. Ethan leaned back and sighed. She always used to say that someday our lives would surprise us. Well, Evan muttered. She wasn't wrong. Later that day, Harold brought them to his private office. A sleek, modern room with tall bookshelves and family photos that weren't of family. Just him shaking hands with presidents and CEOs. I never imagined I'd show this to anyone, Harold said, unlocking a small drawer and pulling out an old velvet box. Inside was a silver necklace, a single charm, the letter C. I bought this for Christine after our last date. I planned to give it to her before I left town, but we never saw each other again. I kept it all these years. He handed it to Ellie. She would have wanted you to have it. Ellie held the necklace like it was glass. Her fingers closed around it, and tears filled her eyes. Thank you. They left the office quietly, each one feeling the weight of the past and the growing shape of something new. That night, they gathered around the dinner table again. Harold had the chef cook ribs and cornbread, Christine's favorite meal, according to an old story Emma had shared. Ethan made everyone laugh with impressions of their mom. Her fake southern accent, her habit of humming while folding laundry, the way she used to clap once to get everyone's attention. Harold laughed harder than he had in years. Do you think she'd be mad we came? Evan asked. No, Ellie said firmly. She'd want this. She'd want us to know him, to give him a chance. Harold blinked away the moisture in his eyes. You four? You're more than I ever dreamed of. If I could trade all of this, he waved at the mansion, for just one more day with Christine and you as children, I would. Don't be dramatic, Ethan said with a grin. I'm serious, Harold replied. I'd give up every dollar. There was a long pause. Ellie reached across the table and touched his hand. We don't need your money, she said. We just want you to be real. Harold nodded. I will be. After dinner, they all walked the hallways of the house. The kids explored the old study rooms, the movie theater again, and even found a secret elevator that Harold had forgotten existed. In one of the spare rooms, Emma found a blank wall and smiled. You should hang new photos here. Of us? Harold tilted his head. You'd let me? Of course, Evan said. We're here, aren't we? Ethan pulled out his camera and began snapping pictures. That settles it. We're making a wall of us. They took silly photos, serious ones, one of Harold, hugging all four of them at once while pretending to fall over. Laughter echoed through the hallways, louder than any board meeting or investor call ever had. As the night grew late, Ellie came to Harold's office again. I have a favor to ask, she said. Anything. Will you visit Mum's grave with us next week? In Tulsa. Harold stood slowly. You want me to come with you? Yes, she said. She may not be here, but I think it's time you said goodbye. And maybe we said hello. Harold swallowed hard. He nodded. I'd be honored. The Tulsa skyline was small, but to the Quadruplets it was home. The plane landed just after noon on a Tuesday. The heat rolled over the runway in waves, and the silence inside the car that picked them up was heavy. Harold sat between Ellie and Emma, his hands resting nervously on his knees. The city was unfamiliar to him. Dusty roads, small buildings, people walking slowly as if time itself moved differently here. This was her world, he said softly. I can't believe I missed it all. Ethan looked out the window. We lived in 3 different apartments growing up, never big places, but she made each one feel like a castle. She had a way of making even burnt toast taste like a 5-star breakfast, Emma added with a soft smile. Harold chuckled lightly, but then fell quiet. His thoughts drifted. What kind of man leaves a woman like that behind? They arrived at the cemetery just before 2 p.m. The sun was high, but a gentle breeze rustled the trees, as if nature itself knew something special was happening. The grave was simple. Christine Marie Taylor, loving mother, fierce friend, free spirit, 1979-2022. There were flowers already there, fresh ones. A neighbor must have visited recently. Harold stood still, staring at the stone as if it might suddenly speak. I'm sorry, he whispered. The Quadruplets stood behind him, giving him space. Harold knelt and placed a folded note by the flowers. I should have come back. I should have looked for you. You gave me 4 miracles and I didn't even know. But I know now. And I promise I'll take care of them. I'll make sure they never feel alone again. His voice cracked. I wish you could see them, Christine. They're incredible. He stayed there for a long time. Then Ellie stepped forward and placed the silver necklace, the one Harold had given her, in front of the headstone. She deserves to have it, she said quietly. It was always meant for her. Harold didn't. Stop her. He only nodded, eyes full of tears. After the visit, they stopped by their old apartment complex. The kids gave Harold the full tour, showing him the swing set that Ethan once broke jumping off, the laundry room where Ellie got stuck for 2 hours, and the mailbox where Christine used to leave handwritten notes when one of them had a bad day. She'd leave a letter from the universe every Friday, Emma said. Stuff like, Dear Emma, today you are stronger than you feel and smarter than you know. Love, the universe. Harold smiled through the sting in his chest. She was doing everything on her own and still found ways to make magic. Yeah, Evan said. She was a quiet kind of superhero. Later that night, back in the small Airbnb they rented for the trip, they sat on the porch eating takeout. Harold had insisted on trying the kids' favorite local burger spot. This is what you were raised on? He said, taking a bite. Welcome to greasy heaven, Ethan grinned. Harold looked around the table. I know I can't change the past, but I want to build the future, with you. I'd like to support your education, help you travel, anything you dream of, but I'll only do it if you let me. Ellie shook her head. We're not here for that. I know, he said. That's why it matters more. Emma leaned forward. So what now? We go back to San Francisco again? Or do we all go back to our regular lives like this was some dream? I don't want it to end, Ethan said. Harold looked down, thoughtful. Then let's not let it end. Let's start something new. Evan raised an eyebrow. Like what? Harold smiled. What if I moved part of my work to Tulsa, got a place here, visited more, stayed connected? No pressure, no cameras, just real life. They all blinked. You'd move here? Ellie asked, stunned. I've spent 20 years living in a castle with no laughter. This town has your memories, your mom's love. I think I could learn something from it. Ethan stood and raised his drink cup. To new chapters. They all clinked paper cups together, smiling through surprise and cautious hope. The next day, before leaving Tulsa, Harold made one last stop. Christine's favorite bookstore. The old woman behind the counter remembered the kids right away. My goodness, look how big you all are, she cried. "And who's this fine gentleman?" Harold smiled gently. "I'm their father." Her face lit up. "Well, it's about time," Harold laughed. "Yes, ma'am, it is." That night, back in San Francisco, Harold stood in his hallway again, but it no longer felt like a museum of a life untouched. Now, it felt like a home waiting to be filled. He pulled out his phone and opened a group chat labeled The Four. He typed, "Back safe, miss you already. Thinking of Tulsa and your mom, she'd be proud." Moments later, the replies came in. "Ethan, glad we went. She would have loved seeing you cry. Ellie, don't forget, we're family now. No backing out." Emma, "I think she does see us, all of us." Evan, "Next trip you're learning to cook. No excuses." Harold laughed out loud, and for the first time in his life he didn't feel like the richest man in the world. He was the richest man in the world. A week had passed since the trip to Tulsa, and everything felt different. The massive mansion in San Francisco no longer felt like a silent museum. The echo of empty footsteps was replaced by voices, real ones. Harold had invited the Quadruplets to spend the summer with him before they returned to college, and to his surprise, they said yes. They arrived one by one with backpacks, art supplies, laptops, books, and a suitcase full of just-in-case items. The staff was shocked. No press releases, no investors, just 4 college kids living with one of the richest men in the country. Ethan was the first to joke about it. "I feel like I'm in The Fresh Prince, but I'm related to Uncle Phil." Harold laughed. "Fair. But this time, you're in charge of the music." Each of the kids picked a room, one by the garden, one with a skylight, one with a balcony, and one near the library. Emma turned her room into an art studio. Ellie brought home medical books and anatomy posters. Evan set up a DIY workshop in the garage. Ethan transformed a guest lounge into a mini film studio and started editing video footage of their time together. Harold, meanwhile, was adjusting. He wasn't used to knocking on doors, waiting in line for the bathroom, or having his fridge raided at 2 a.m., but he loved every bit of it. One night, while passing the hallway, he heard Ethan shout from the media room, "Harold, come watch this scene." Harold stepped in and sat on the couch. The screen showed clips Ethan had cut together, moments from Tulsa, the cemetery, the dinner table, even the drive to the airport. At the end, a single quote from Christine appeared on screen. "The best things in life aren't planned. They just find you when you need them most." Harold couldn't speak. Ethan turned. "You okay?" Harold blinked quickly. "Just proud and honored." They watched the rest in silence. A few days later, Ellie asked to help Harold with his company. "Not the CEO stuff," she said. "I want to understand how you built this, how you made decisions. I want to learn from your mistakes." Harold smiled. "That's the smartest thing anyone's ever said to me about business." They spent hours in his home office, reviewing old startup plans, legal battles, and contracts. Ellie was sharp, focused. She reminded him of himself, only stronger. "You've got instincts," he told her one night. "You're going to change the world," she blushed. "One patient at a time, maybe." Emma painted a mural in the back patio garden, 4 stars, a mother's silhouette, and a mansion glowing with light. She called it Found. When Harold saw it, he froze. "That's Christine," he whispered. "That's her." Emma nodded. "I never told anyone, but I saw her in a dream after she passed. She told me not to be afraid of change, that love would come again." Harold placed a hand on her shoulder. "It did." Evan, quiet as always, kept mostly to himself, but showed up when it mattered. He helped Harold upgrade the solar panels on the roof, redesigned the security system, and even fixed the broken espresso machine in the kitchen. "Why don't you talk more?" Harold asked one day. Evan shrugged. "I say what I need to. You remind me of myself at your age," Harold said. "All brains, no noise." Evan smirked. "Guess I inherited something, huh?" One afternoon, Harold cooked. Yes, cooked. He watched YouTube tutorials, and surprised the kids with homemade pancakes. They were burned, oddly shaped, and one was accidentally salted instead of sugared, but the kids cheered anyway. "This is the most expensive disaster I've ever eaten," Ethan declared, chewing dramatically. Harold grinned. "Glad to know billions can't buy good cooking." Ellie patted his back. "It's the effort that counts." Emma raised her phone. "Smile, family breakfast photo." They all leaned in, laughing and messy. Click! A new memory made. Later that night, Harold stood in front of a hallway wall, once bare, now full of new photos. The kids asleep upstairs, his heart full, he placed one last picture in the center, a photo of Christine smiling under a summer sun. He whispered, "You were right. They saved me." Then he stepped back and stared at the wall. His family, not by accident, not by charity, by fate. It started with a knock. Not the kind you expect in a quiet mansion filled with laughter and second chances. This one was firm, cold, the kind that said, "I don't belong here, but I'm coming in anyway." Harold opened the door and froze. On the porch stood a tall, clean-cut man in a grey suit holding a briefcase. His eyes were sharp, unfriendly. "Mr. Bellamy," the man said, flashing a badge. "Agent Carson, FBI." The air in the hallway thickened. Harold stepped aside slowly. "Come in." The kids gathered minutes later, sensing something was wrong. Ethan showed up first, half asleep. Ellie arrived, already reading the badge number. Emma had a paintbrush in her hair. Evan stood quietly in the corner. "What's going on?" Ellie asked. "Agent Carson didn't sugarcoat it. There's an ongoing investigation into one of your business associates, Mr. Bellamy, a man by the name of Leonard Grayson." Harold stiffened. Leonard had been a trusted partner years ago. Smart, powerful, and dangerous if pushed. "What does this have to do with me?" Harold asked. "You're not being charged," Carson said. "Yet. But we believe Grayson may have used Bellamy Tech as a channel for illegal international money transfers." The room fell silent. "I haven't spoken to Leonard in 5 years," Harold said. "We ended business ties after his last scandal. We'll need access to your past communications, financial records, and travel logs." Ellie stepped forward. "He just got his family back. You can't—" Harold held up a hand. "It's okay. I have nothing to hide." Agent Carson handed over a card. "We'll be in touch." And just like that, he was gone. For the first time since Tulsa, the house felt cold again. Emma sat on the staircase. "What does this mean? Could you go to jail?" "No," Harold said firmly. "I'm not involved in anything illegal, but the press doesn't wait for facts. If this story gets out, everything we've built together could be questioned." Evan leaned on the railing. "What about our trust in you?" Harold looked him in the eye. "That's the only thing I care about." That night, the kids gathered without Harold in the media room. The mood was tense. "Do we even know everything about him?" Ethan asked. Ellie shook her head. "Not yet, but I believe he's telling the truth." "What if the world doesn't?" Emma whispered. Evan crossed his arms. "Then we fight for him." They all looked up. Evan rarely said much, but when he did, they listened. Meanwhile, in his study, Harold opened a locked drawer. Inside were files, old emails, contracts with Grayson, documents he hadn't looked at in years. "Why didn't I burn these when I had the chance?" he thought. His hands trembled as he pulled out an old letter from Christine. He'd never read it. Oh, fully, just tucked it away in fear and guilt. He opened it now. "Harold, if you're reading this, it means something brought you back. I hope it's love, or pain, or both. I want you to know I never hated you. I understood you better than you thought. I knew you were scared. But if our kids ever find you, don't let fear push them away like it pushed me. They're your second chance. Be better this time. Love always, Christine." Tears blurred the ink. The next morning, Harold met the kids in the dining room. "I need to tell you everything," he said. "Not just about Grayson, about me, about the mistakes I made trying to build this empire." They listened as he told them about the early years, how he'd skipped funerals, birthdays, and friendships chasing perfection, how he'd trusted the wrong people, how he'd lost himself. I thought money could make up for everything, but it didn't. When he finished, no one said a word. Then Ellie walked over and hugged him. "You're not the man who made those mistakes. Not anymore." Emma followed, then Ethan, then Evan. They held him tight. A silent promise passed between them. Whatever storm was coming, they'd face it together. Later that week, the media caught wind of the investigation. Headlines flashed across screens. Tech giant Harold Bellamy linked to federal probe. Former billionaire ally under fire. Is Bellamy next? Paparazzi camped outside the mansion. Reporters hounded them at grocery stores. Emma's mural was vandalized. Ethan's student film was pulled from a festival for review. Harold stood in the middle of the chaos, calm as ever, and then he did something unexpected. He called a press conference. In front of a crowd of cameras, Harold stepped up to the podium in front of his own home. "My name is Harold Bellamy," he said. "For years I built a life that looked good on paper, but behind it I was alone, a shell. That changed recently when I met my children, the 4 beautiful souls their mother raised without me." A few gasps ran through the reporters. "I'm cooperating fully with the investigation. I have nothing to hide, but I won't let fear steal this second chance. I have a family now, and I'll protect them with everything I have." He stepped away without answering a single question. The video went viral. People didn't see a billionaire. They saw a man who'd been lost and was finally found. The press conference changed everything. Some people doubted him, but many more saw the truth. A man willing to risk his reputation to protect the children he barely knew but already loved. Support began pouring in. Emails, letters, even old friends who hadn't spoken to Harold in years reached out. One message stood out. "You're not who you were, Harold. You're better. Keep going." It was signed simply, "A friend of Christine's." Despite the growing support, the FBI continued their investigation. Agent Carson visited twice that week. His tone wasn't cruel, but it was clear he wasn't there to make friends. "We're close to clearing you," he told Harold in private. "But Grayson is slippery. If he drags your name into this, we can't promise it'll stay out of court." Harold nodded calmly. "I'm not afraid of court. I'm only afraid of losing what I just found." Carson studied him for a long moment. "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen." Inside the house, the kids had become an unshakable unit. Ethan posted a video explaining the truth from their side, what Harold had meant to them since reconnecting, and what kind of man he was trying to be. The video hit 2 million views in a day. Emma used her art to design a simple but powerful image. 4 hands holding up a cracked crown. Beneath it the words, "Blood didn't make us. Love did." It went viral. Ellie took it a step further. She published an open letter in her university's online journal. "Harold Bellamy is not perfect, but he shows up. He listens. He tries. Isn't that what a real father is?" Even Evan, who normally stayed quiet, helped design a full-page ad defending Harold in one of the country's top newspapers. It read, "Judge a man not by who he was, but by who he becomes when given a second chance." For the first time in his life, Harold wasn't the one saving people. He was the one being saved, and he'd never felt more alive. One night, as they sat around the fire pit, Harold turned to the kids. "I've been thinking—" "Oh boy," Ethan said. "That's never just a casual sentence," Harold chuckled. "I want to make something permanent, not just money for you if something happens. I want this family to exist on paper. I want to legally adopt you." Silence. Not awkward, just heavy with meaning. Ellie blinked. "You want to adopt all of us?" "Yes," Harold said, "if you'll let me. You don't have to change your names or anything. I just want the law to say what I already feel in my heart, that you're mine, my family." Emma wiped her eyes. "That's all I ever wanted, even when I didn't know it." Ethan gave a small smirk. "Only if I get to be the favorite." "Too late," Evan muttered. They all laughed and agreed. The next day, Harold's lawyer came by with the adoption paperwork. The process would take a few weeks, but it was happening. As the lawyer left, he smiled at Harold. Most billionaires don't worry about family. I used to be like that, Harold replied, but then I found something worth more than all the money in the world. Meanwhile, the investigation into Leonard Grayson was coming to a boil. Grayson had gone quiet, but that silence only meant one thing. He was planning something. Harold had a hunch. He's going to try to shift blame. Frame me. Then we beat him with proof, Ellie said, flipping through documents like a detective. We have dates, emails, and timestamps. And we use them, Evan added. All of them. The kids didn't just believe in Harold. They were fighting with him. The family built a timeline of every transaction Harold had made during his time with Grayson. They found emails where Harold clearly said no to shady deals. They found reports where Harold pulled funding when things didn't feel right. They organized it into a single presentation, clean, powerful, undeniable. When Agent Carson saw it, he leaned back and crossed his arms. This changes everything. A week later, Carson called with final news. You're officially cleared, he said. Your name's clean. Harold felt a lump rise in his throat. Thank you. Carson paused. You've got a good thing going. Don't waste it. That night, Harold made dinner himself, again. And this time the pancakes weren't burnt. They sat at the table, the five of them. No cameras, no headlines, just warmth. As they passed plates and traded jokes, a sense of peace settled in. I still can't believe this is real, Emma said softly. Harold looked at her and smiled. Neither can I, but I'm never letting it go. Upstairs, a new photo hung in the hallway. Harold, with all four kids, smiling wide, arms around each other. Above, home isn't a place. It's who you're with. A knock echoed through the mansion again. This time it wasn't the FBI. It wasn't reporters. It was him, Leonard Grayson. Wearing a silk suit, sunglasses, and a crooked smile, he stood on the porch like he still owned the world. But his eyes told a different story, cornered, desperate, and hiding behind charm that didn't fool anyone anymore. Harold, he said coolly. Mind if we talk? Harold didn't flinch. You've got 5 minutes. Leonard stepped inside, glancing around the bright, warm foyer. Didn't expect the king of Silicon to become the star of a Hallmark movie. I didn't expect you to become a criminal, Harold shot back. Leonard smirked. Come on. We both knew where the money came from. You just had the luxury of getting out early. Harold's jaw tightened. I got out because I realized I was losing myself, and you're still lost. Leonard shrugged. I came here to make a deal. I'm not interested. You should be. Leonard leaned closer. I go down and I take you with me. The court of public opinion isn't as forgiving as your kids. Silence. Then, calmly, Harold said, You already tried to ruin me, and my kids stood by me. You've got no cards left, Leonard. Leonard's smirk faded. You really think a few college kids can save your legacy? No, Harold said, stepping forward. I don't care about legacy anymore. I care about truth, and love, and family. Things you never understood. Leonard's eyes flashed with anger. You were just like me once. Harold looked him dead in the eye. And that's exactly why I'll never be like you again. He pointed to the door. Get out! Leonard hesitated, then turned and walked out without another word. That night, Harold sat on the patio with Evan, watching the stars. He was my old reflection, Harold said. Greedy, empty, cold. Evan didn't look away from the sky. Then you've come a long way. Harold nodded slowly. Thanks to you all. Later, in the living room, Ethan showed everyone a short documentary he had finished about their journey. He titled it Father Found. It opened with the letter Christine had written, then showed clips, Harold opening the first letter, the kids meeting him for the first time, their trip to Tulsa, the press conference, the day they signed the adoption papers. By the end, everyone was silent. Emma wiped her eyes. That was beautiful. Harold turned to Ethan. You're a storyteller, Ethan smiled, and you're our story. Meanwhile, Ellie received an offer for an internship at a top hospital in Boston. They want me for the summer, she told Harold, unsure. But that means I'd be gone. Harold took her hand. Ellie, you have to go. The world needs what you bring. Just don't forget you've got a home here. She hugged him tightly. Never. Emma was invited to show her mural work in a San Francisco gallery. Her painting, Found, was selected as the cover for their summer exhibition. I don't want to leave the house, she said. You're not leaving, Harold told her. You're sharing what lives inside it. Ethan's film was accepted into a national student competition. He'd be traveling across the country for screenings. This could launch my career, he said. But I don't want to miss anything here, Harold smiled. Go live it and film it all. Even Evan, usually quiet and private, was offered a spot at a summer tech accelerator for inventors in Seattle. He surprised everyone when he said, I'm thinking of going, and even more when he added, but only if I can come back. Harold stood up and placed a hand on his shoulder. You always can. The kids were growing, stretching into their dreams, one by one, and Harold, he wasn't afraid anymore. On the last evening before they all went their separate ways for the summer, they sat on the mansion rooftop, watching the sunset. Golden light poured over them. A soft breeze stirred the air. It was quiet, peaceful. Ethan broke the silence. I used to think family was just genetics, Emma added. I used to think it was too late to hope. Ellie said, I used to think love had to be earned. Evan looked at Harold. I used to think I didn't need a dad. Harold's voice cracked just a little. And I used to think I didn't deserve a second chance. They sat for a moment, longer in stillness. Then Harold said, Let's promise, no matter how far we go, we come back here together. Deal, Ethan said. Deal, Emma echoed. Ellie nodded. Always. Evan simply said, Yeah. And they all watched the last light of day fade behind the hills, hearts full, hands warm, family finally whole. The mansion was quieter, not empty, not sad, just in between. Ethan had flown to New York to screen his film. Ellie was already in Boston working in the emergency department. Emma had left for her art show. Evan was in Seattle building a new kind of medical sensor in a tech lab. And Harold, he stayed home, not because he was stuck, but because home was no longer a lonely place. It pulsed with memories now, laughter in the halls, morning pancakes, movie nights, long talks under stars. For the first time in his life, Harold knew what it felt like to wait for someone with love, not anxiety. He didn't pace, he prepared. He turned the mansion into more than just marble floors and golden chandeliers. He built a garden with Christine's favorite flowers, tulips and wild roses. He framed the kids' art. He opened the guest rooms to host college friends visiting from afar. He even volunteered at the local center in Tulsa once a week, flying in quietly to donate books and speak to young men about regret, growth, and a healing. He wasn't a billionaire hiding in a glass tower anymore. He was Dad, and that title meant more than every business deal he'd ever made. 3 months passed, and one by one, the kids came home. Ellie was first. She returned with a medical, a pin in her suitcase and new confidence in her voice. I delivered a baby in the ER, she told Harold. The mom was alone. I stayed with her the whole time. She held my hand and cried when the baby came. You were her family that night, Harold said. Ellie nodded. Yeah, and then I realized you were mine. Ethan came next. He arrived. At the front steps, filming himself walking in, camera tilted up to capture the house, the door, and finally, Harold. Cut, he said. Perfect opening shot, Harold laughed. What are you making now? A documentary series, Ethan replied, about chosen families. Harold smiled wide. You've got the best example right here. Emma came home later that night. She had a rolled-up canvas in one hand and a tired look in her eyes. "The art show went well," she said, dropping her bags. "But I didn't like the people. Too fake, too loud." Harold handed her a glass of lemonade. "Then you're in the right place," she smiled. "Yeah, I missed this." Evan came last. He didn't say much, as usual, but when he walked through the door, he handed Harold a small box. Inside was a metal wristband with a glowing blue center. "I built this," Evan said. "It's a medical alert band. For you." "For me?" Harold asked, surprised. "It monitors heart rate, fall detection, glucose levels, and blood pressure. I programmed it to notify all four of us if anything goes wrong." Harold stared at him. "You built this to protect me?" Evan shrugged. "It's what you do for people you love." That night, the mansion came back to life. Laughter filled the rooms again. Music played softly. They cooked together, making a complete mess of the kitchen, and didn't care. Later, as they sat around the long wooden dining table, Harold stood up with a toast. "When I was young, I thought power meant being alone at the top. But now I know the truth." He looked at each of them. "Power is love, and wealth is time, and success is sitting here right now with you." They raised their glasses, water, tea, soda, and clinked them together. "To family," Ethan said. "To coming home," Emma added. "To second chances," Ellie said. Evan looked at Harold. "To Dad." In the weeks that followed, life settled into something beautiful. Not perfect. There were arguments, burnt toast, sibling spats over who left laundry in the machine. But there was also joy. They built Saturday traditions, game nights, volunteer days, road trips. Harold even started writing. A book, not about business, but about Christine. About the kids. About redemption. He titled it Letter from the Future, and in the front he dedicated it to Christine for trusting me with our children, and to Ellie, Ethan, Emma, and Evan. Thank you for saving me. Love, Dad. On the anniversary of Christine's passing, they returned to Tulsa. The grave was still simple, but this time it wasn't lonely. They brought flowers, pictures, stories. They laughed more than they cried, and as they stood there, Harold whispered, "I kept my promise." Ellie took his hand. "You did." That evening, as they sat under the same Oklahoma sky that started it all, Harold looked up at the stars and smiled. He didn't need anything else. Not money, not fame, not even forgiveness. He had what he never thought he could. A second chance, a full table, a real home, a future, and he would never let it go.